Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So a big part of this episode has Archie helping out Eric, obviously working with his Uncle Frank. They're trying to get Eric help because he's having PTSD moments that, and Archie's like, yeah, he's had issues before, but like this is the worst it's ever gotten, to the point he'd gotten his rifle and he like ended up hitting Archie and just was ready to lock and load. If it wasn't for his Uncle Frank stepping in, he would have pulled the trigger on Archie. And so obviously Archie's tried to get him some help at like a VA situation, but like no matter what he does, I think obviously being kind of like a point to kind of talk about like how that system can it's a very complicated system of there's so many hoops you have to go through, and even then like these are people who are desperately in need of help and they're not always able to get there because the resources aren't always there for them, and even when they're there they can't get access to them. So that's the whole complicated thing for Archie and Eric in this situation. So Frank ends up getting a dog to kind of act as kind of like a support animal. It's like, he's seen other people who've been through kind of what Eric has been through, and it's kind of acted as a means of kind of giving them something to focus on, give them a routine to kind of adjust back to normal life. And the whole conversation gets Archie talking about his dog that came up previously. It's like, oh yeah, whatever happened? It's like, well, when I was overseas, my mom took him and moved him to Chicago with her, and he died while I was overseas. I was like, oh, that's rough. And then obviously Archie starts bringing up this conversation about Bingo. It's a dog that their unit took in together, but it died on the battlefield. Because Archie's trying to make it seem like, okay, I'm here to help Eric. Eric's the one kind of going through stuff. I'm fine. Like, yeah, I haven't had nightmare in months, which obviously he's lying. And I think that stems from, like, I think a lot of that is a very, like, common thing that's been about Archie since like the beginning. Like he's always had like some darkness, and obviously that's grown and expanded over the course of the year, because it's always just been Archie always trying to do his best. He's trying to help people, and anytime he feels like he can't help anyone, he feels like he's failing, because for him it's like that's kind of like my main thing. I need to help people, whether it's Riverdale, whether it's Eric. When he feels like he's let people down or failed them, like it crushes him, and I think he kind of drowns in that. Because that's not just like a recent thing. Like I'm sure like being in the army just exasperated that, even more. But it's been a core aspect of Archie since the beginning of this series, And like I said, I think that's just kind of grown more and more over the course of the series as well. But Archie, the moment he finds out that there's a dog fighting ring, he's like, wait, something like that is here in Riverdale. So he goes with Fang and Eric to bust it up instead. But it wasn't there for like justice, like, oh, let's free the animals. Because Eric's like, we got freedom. He's like, yeah, but we're also going to teach this guy a lesson. And Archie beats the crap out of him. Because we've seen that side of Archie, like when he kind of gives into his darker natures and just kind of loses himself in it. And it turns out Bingo wasn't just a dog that died. Bingo was a grunt, like, was kind of like Eric. And so it wasn't just a dog that died. It was a person, and someone that was under his charge. It's like, and that's the rough thing of like, the same thing, even though he said it was like about a dog, it's, the story still holds true of he wanted to go back out there and get Bingo, but Eric stopped him because it's like, right, like we're in the middle of fire, like you can't go out there because you'll most likely die, we'll both die. And it's like if Archie had done that, him and Eric would be dead right now. Neither one of them would be alive. But it still doesn't make it any easier. Like, right, I wasn't able to save anyone. That's the thing for Archie. It's like, with everything that Riverdale has become, like, he thought, like, I think on some level, because of all that he couldn't do on the battlefield, that's why he wants to save Riverdale even more. Because it is his home. It's what his father would do. His father strived, spent, so much time being here in Riverdale, building it up, being the heart of Riverdale. And he's trying to restore Riverdale to its glory. But it's also because in the military, he felt like there was so much that they did, and that so many people he couldn't save, that it's almost like he's trying to make up for it with Riverdale. But now it's like, then I failed to save people in the military. I'm failing to save Riverdale. I'm almost getting to the point, like, I'm starting to think maybe there's nothing left in this city to kind of believe in, to hope for, and, fight for. But Frank and Eric work on putting together kind of a thing for, like, the dogs to actually get adopted, because not all things in Riverdale are terrible, and this was kind of a nice reminder for Archie, but it doesn't make, it's a long process. It's not like a quick fix. It's not like this is going to be the end all be all for a lot of his issues. It's like, no, like Archie, like Eric, needs some legitimate help. And now he's even seeing Bingo at the end. He's like, yeah, I think I need help too. And I think that's the first step, is recognizing you need help and asking for it. And I think that's also the thing too, like Archie struggled with that too. He's not the biggest in asking for help. I mean, to be fair, a lot of the core characters of the show, like, they can, like, rely on people. They will call on people from time to time, but they all have a tendency to also try to handle everything on their own. They try to shoulder a lot. I think Archie more so than others, but everyone as well. Like, everyone's struggling with their thing. Betty's doing her thing. Veronica's doing... That's also an interesting thing, too. I think that should be focused on, too. Like, the core group of Riverdale is scattered off doing their own thing. Like, they're not interconnecting. Like, what Archie's going through, Betty and Veronica aren't a part of that. Like, Jughead's not around to be a part of that. Like, he's getting other people involved too, but like that core group of friends, like, they were the core. They've always been the core of the show, and to see that they're not, like, I don't know if anyone else is really recognizing that, and I think that's why Riverdale as a whole, like, this town isn't, because, like, that group is the core, has kind of been the heart of everything in Riverdale, and when they're not in sync, it just feels like it's less likely to get everything else in sync. Like I said, they're all dealing with their own issues, which kind of plays into the fact is that they've grown so far apart over these past 7 years. Like, obviously before the time skip, they were already kind of falling apart, but even more so with all the time between them. So I think that's kind of an interesting element they're kind of reflecting back into the show, because I never even thought about it. I was like, right, they are so disconnected. Like, none of their stories, like, they reference each other, but, like, they are their own separate stories. Once again, we haven't even touched on Jughead since last episode, so there is that interesting element to everything. Another side of things is Cheryl trying to be there for Kevin. She found Kevin out in the woods, still doing the hookup thing. And so she invites him to the ministry, because it's like, right, maybe you kind of find something else, but it ended up not being his thing. But what stems from it at the heart of it all is Fang. Like, how things, it's like, right, I broke up with him, and where things kind of stand, that's kind of where some issues are for him. And so, Cheryl suggests, like, right, kind of like letting Fang know what you're feeling, like, regardless of what he says, at the very least, kind of almost like getting yourself closure for your own peace of mind is kind of a necessary thing. Because even Kevin was kind of hesitant about the whole ministry thing, because it's like, it sounds like a Blossom scam, but she's like, no, it's maybe for my mom it is, but for me, like, it made her feel peace of mind, peace that she kind of felt before the whole, swinger key party thing going down. So there's that. But when Kevin goes over to Fang, like, oh, I gotta say this while I have my card. Oh, cool, Moose is here, which I'm like, have we not seen Moose since the last season, like, during the whole, like, Stonewall Prep thing? I want to say that's the last time we saw Moose. And it's like, hey, Kevin. I was like, oh, and Kevin's just like, yeah, I gotta get out of here. I gotta process both my exes hooking up with each other, and just kind of walking out, And so what really we get to Kevin's real core issue at the heart of it, it's like, it's not about Fang, it's more so about me. Like, my life isn't what I wanted, because, like, look, I got teacher of the year and everything, but it's like, working as a teacher in Riverdale, this town that's, like, literally falling apart, that's almost like, oh, we're saving. It's like, my dreams are kind of like, to write stuff and produce kind of like, musicals and stuff like that. It was supposed to be almost like a Broadway situation. That was supposed to be his dream. And it's like, I don't want this. It's like cool, fine and dandy, but I wasn't expecting, like, this award is a reminder of, this is all my life is. This is all I have to show for myself. This isn't where I saw my life going. I had bigger dreams. And that's the complicated thing of being like, even at that age of, like, they're in their 20s, of being like, right, this isn't where I thought my life was going. And I'm here. I get that. And I think a lot of people, not even just in their 20s, a lot of people feel like, yeah, my life isn't what I thought it would be. I thought, So Cheryl takes him, he now works at the church, kind of like filling that same role for the church. Penelope doesn't seem too gun-ho about the idea, because she's just kind of like got that smile of hers, like, everything's okay. But it's like, because this was kind of her thing, and Cheryl kind of hijacked it with Kevin as they're performing, and it's nice, and it means a lot to people, but I think it is still kind of like, right, this is my thing. And I'm curious, is that, like, I think it does legitimately mean a lot to Cheryl, but I think this will play into the fact is that it is kind of like a thing for Penelope, because Penelope's all about control, like being able to control, manipulate people. Oh, that's not a foreign thing for her. Like, that's something she kind of like, it's kind of to her core. So I think that could turn into an issue where she gets pissed at Cheryl because it's like, no, this is supposed to be my thing, but it's like not like she has the most altruistic thing. I mean, because like she did start this, but like I said, Kevin and Cheryl hijacked it, and we might see issues of that going forward. Maybe she'll try and manipulate it and use it to her advantage, but like she tried to like she had that smile about herself this episode where it's kind of like, oh yeah, like ha 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 ha, but I don't appreciate this. Like the look on her face wasn't too happy, so we'll see kind of where things go from there. But obviously we have another element to this episode being Veronica and Reggie, which I thought immediately, I was like, oh, Reggie's back to working for Veronica. Like, not officially, but it's like, right, her dad did kind of kick him to the curb for his own sake. I think rightfully so last episode. But Veronica's still trying to make, work on the stock market so that she can get back all the money so she can make up for all this Chad business. And Reggie being, it's like, right, I have the experience selling cars at my dad's dealership. So it's like, right, I am a closer. I can make this happen. Because none of like what Veronica was doing ahead of time was working. But then bringing in Reggie, is actually pretty good at it. And they start working, but like she's already run through all her names. It's actually pretty smooth to see like Reggie do his thing, and then like they actually make a really good team. Once again, just interesting. Like he exchanged one lodge for another, one less evil and manipulative and trying to crush a town. Lodge. Obviously, this lodge is just trying to like get her life out of debt that her soon-to-be ex-husband, still current husband, because he's blackmailing her, kind of put her in this position. So she's trying to like dig herself out of this ditch that he's put them in. I also think that's so interesting. It's like we see her doing all the legwork. It's like, we haven't seen Chad for a while. Like, what the hell has he been doing? Like, has he been putting in any work to kind of pull them out of the debt? It's like, nah, I'm gonna leave it up to Veronica, which makes you even more of a terrible. We already knew for a while you were a terrible person. Like, this just makes you even crappier. That the fact is, I don't see you lifting anything. If anything, he'll probably make things worse and dive them even deeper. And it's just gonna be like, right, he's gonna continue to be a parasite, because it's about power, and it's like, if the closer Veronica gets to potentially digging them out of this grave, he's going to try and dig them deeper because he wants Veronica. Like, he hasn't been around her, but it is a thing of like, it's not even like I want you. It's just I want to own you. It's I want you to be mine and no one else's. It's not even like necessarily I'm in love with you, but it's like I want something that I can kind of control and have power over. I do mean something, because I don't think like, the way he kind of treats Veronica, it just feels like she's more like property than a person I love. Like I said, he seemed very obsessive before, but I think he sees her as more of a prize than an actual person. Part of me wonders, is he eventually going to work with Hiram to kind of screw her over? Because like, right, you help me, you get what you want, I get what I want, because Veronica poached a lot of his clients, at least some of it. I think a lot of them, because like Reggie was like, yeah, the Sodell thing is like a front. He's like, he's keeping all his investors busy, like lying, coming up with lies to keep them not wondering why nothing's been built yet, while he looks like this for this Palladium, which is interesting considering like last episode he made the whole point of like going to get everything, the Palladium and his family back. We'll see how that works considering all of this. But, so the fascinating thing, I'm curious, like I said, how Hiram's going to like respond to all of this. Won't be too happy, but I think there's also that part like, oh, my daughter's sniping from me and taking from me. All right, I'm gonna strike back. Like I said, I think that's going to involve Chad, or he's going to make some moves of his own. Like, I'm also worried for Veronica. I'm like, I hope you can keep these promises, because if you can't, this is going to blow up in your face. But once again, there might be other contributing factors to why this might blow up in your face. We'll see. Celebratory for now, but at the same time, like, Veronica's helping out with Tabitha and Betty's whole situation, as well as Cheryl taking part in it, because Tabitha and Betty's operation got shut down by Glenn when the real FBI gets involved and ends up taking her badge, because like, right, you quit the FBI so you don't need that or the gun, which I even love. Betty being like, man, I should have stabbed you even harder. I'm like, should you really be saying that to the FBI agent? Like, I guess all that got swept under the rug, but should we really be talking about that, bringing it up? It's like, we'll leave that be for now. But Betty and Tabitha, though, haven't given up. In fact, they're thinking of using Pops and the Worm as a means of drawing customers in, like bring truckers to them. This way they don't have to cross paths with the FBI and get all up in their investigation, so it's not as much of an issue. I still think Glenn's more like... I mean, once again, Charles ended up being who he was. So, like, who's to say Clint isn't the same? Like, I get the feeling like he's TBK. Like, that's been my theory for a while now. Just, like, I can't shake it. Maybe he just ends up being a power-controlling douchebag. But just, like, a lot of his actions, just everything, just, you know. I'm also surprised that still hasn't come back up. Maybe that's going to be a much later thing. Maybe that's not even something that's going to get covered this season, but maybe in a future season. But I don't know. Like I said, I just get the feeling like he's TBK. We'll see. But aside from all of that, they attract a lot of truckers, and looking through their stuff, they find one potential, hey, let's check this out. Oh, it's just pig's blood. So that ended up not being a thing. And I love Betty made the whole point of like, right, nobody goes off on their own. Everyone's with somebody else. And immediately when the last guy shows up, she goes off her own. She's got Tabitha backing her up, but it's like, no, you should like, you know, once again, like everyone's a little headstrong going into everything on their own, like having some backup, but really you're going like full throttle, full throttle, with all of that, you know? So, and then like the moment I was like, is this guy not going to be... I don't think this guy's going to be related to the killings and everything going on. He might just be a completely different sociopath that's unrelated to all of this. Everything with Polly, I don't think it's this dude. Because whoever it was potentially picked up Jughead. We never know. Jughead might actually be back in New York, but he might be mixed up in this whole Polly thing as well. Who knows? But, the moment he's like, oh yeah, my grandma's about to die, so that's why I'm here. He's like, no, it's okay, it's beautiful. And I was like, I was like, all right, that sounds a little crazy, but I'm like, no, I'm like, you know, some people can look at death. It's like, right, you know, it's not an ending, it's a new beginning to a certain extent, because when people die, you know, energy never disappears. It just takes on a new shape or form and goes somewhere else, but it still exists without dissipating. So I thought maybe he was going down that route. It's like like the look in people's eyes, and when it fades away, it's so amazing. I'm like, oh, okay, there was a good. I wasn't expecting you to be so open about your psychopathness. And then it's like, oh, he pulls out the knife. It's like, okay, cool. So you're not even hiding who you are. Later on, coming at her with a chainsaw, full-blown Texas Chainsaw massacring this. I love she threw her, like, it's like she beat the crap out of him before, and then like it took a wrench to the face to finally knock him out. Luckily, Tabitha showed up. It's like, cool, let's call the cops. Betty's like, no, let's not do that. And it's like, cool, dark lane. Everyone's going down their dark path. And to be fair, much like Archie, Betty's had her dark moments. Dark Betty has just, you know, taken on a new form. And so she's like, right, we're going to take him somewhere. I'm going to get information about Polly. Then we hand him over to the cops. I'm like, that's super not going to go well, because we've seen how far she can go as Dark Betty. Like, I think it's just going to come full circle where after everything with TBK, like, I think, and once again, kind of much like Archie needing to, like, save someone to kind of fill some void inside of you to some extent. Like, this is your sister, so it's a little bit different, but I think there is still that kind of savior complex thing that both her and Archie kind of have. That, you know, I think it's her trying to counteract the darkness in her. Like, no, I can, like, why you became an FBI agent in the first place, to kind of counteract the whole serial killer thing that runs in your family, both your dad and your brother. So there's that element to it, but I just know it's not going to work. It's not. Where Archie kind of went dark side this episode, kind of went crazy. I think she's probably going to do the same thing, and Tabitha's going to be like, right, should I? I'm kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Enabling Betty's behavior under these circumstances, so that's where they might find themselves. Not unless it's not that this has nothing to do with Polly. Like I said, I think this isn't going. I think he's going to be a completely separate sociopath. He might not have anything to do with Polly. He might actually have something to do with Jughead. I think that's probably where that actually might go. Like I said, not unless we find out, Jughead was picked up by an okay driver and he's actually in New York. So, still curious about that whole situation with his ex, Jessica, right? Like, I'm blanking on her name already, even though she was in the last episode. I'm like, We'll see kind of where things on that front goes. If that, like I said, I think there's a lot more manipulative stuff going on than they trying to. Like, she's like, oh, I'm curious about like, oh, if Jughead's gonna write. I'm like, I'm sure she's gonna take that, hijack the story he wrote and make it seem like it's hers, even though it's his, just to kind of put her name back on the map, type of thing. Because she said it herself, she's a writer, but she tried to make it seem like, knowing she could play Betty. I kind of brought this all up last episode, but I still think that's an angle to it. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.